The Red Sox have found themselves a new first baseman for the rest of the season. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. Two things. Yes, I am sunburned. It is very red, and I apologize if it's a little bit unpleasant to look at. Two, we got a whole lot of news to cover in this video. The Red Sox had a very eventful weekend. We've got injury news to talk about. We've got a series we got to talk about. We've got signing we got to talk about, and a whole lot of movement on this Red Sox roster. So start with what the Red Sox actually did this weekend, because overall, it was a positive series. The Red Sox took 2 out of 3 from the Miami Marlins. That officially put them at 68-57 on the season. Now good for the top wildcard spot in the AL. Still good for 5 games back of the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, the ending of this series kind of stunk, right? It really kind of hurt because the Red Sox actually should have swept this series pretty significantly. The bullpen, the offense, they just simply weren't able to capitalize on opportunities that allowed them to actually win this game. Aroldis Chapman should have been in the finale 10 games out of 10. Unfortunately, you had to use him in the middle game of this series because you don't have anyone that can mop up baseball games. It feels like every time the Red Sox find a guy who they sit there and they say, hey, maybe this is someone who could end up being that white flag victory cigar type player, they just simply can't get the job done, right? Isaiah Campbell came into this middle game and they were up by 5 runs. That should have been a very easy, okay, give up, even if you give up 2 runs, figure it out, get the job done, get us home happy. He just couldn't do that. You had to use Chapman. I think a lot of people are going to say, well, Chapman was only used for 2 or 3 pitches in that middle game. Why couldn't they use him in the finale? I think it's also important to remember, one, Aroldis Chapman's over 35 years old. Keeping him healthy is very important for what the Red Sox are trying to do here. 2, it's not just the fact that he comes in, throws a couple of pitches, and that's sort of it, right? He has a whole routine in the bullpen. He's got to build himself up from 0 to 100 every single time he goes out there. So it's not just the 2 pitches he throws in the game itself, it's actually the stuff he does in the bullpen as well. So the moral of the story is you shouldn't be having this conversation, right? We shouldn't be sitting here talking about whether or not Aroldis Chapman could have gone into that game. He should have been in there, but you weren't able to do that because of your middle game of this series. The Red Sox need to figure something out as soon as humanly possible. Losing games like this in August just simply is unacceptable. You sweep this series, you're a full game ahead of the Seattle Mariners for that top wild card spot. You're 4 games back of the Toronto Blue Jays in this division, right? Every single game is incredibly important to what you're trying to accomplish, and every single game you should be winning, you need to win, and that's just simply the moral of the conversation here. I don't think there's anything else we could say, right? But while the bullpen needs to make moves, the offense, there is some moves that we need to talk about, and it starts with a new signing for this Red Sox team. Now, this was announced late last night, right around midnight. I think Section 10 technically had it first, or Carabas, or whoever you want to say. I think they technically had the scoop first, but it was officially announced first by Jeff Passan, who announced that the Red Sox are close to finalizing a deal with recently DFA'd and more recently released first baseman Nathaniel Lowe. Now, right here on Red Seat Radio, we actually talked about Nathaniel Lowe last week, so we're just going to recap that a little bit in this video because on the surface, this doesn't look like the greatest pickup in the world. Nathaniel Lowe is having his worst season at the major league level. He's currently hitting just .216 with a .292 on base percentage and a .373 slug and an .88 OPS plus. Certainly not a great year for him offensively. It also hasn't been a great year for him defensively. However, before we get up in arms, before we call this dumpster diving, before we call this being cheap or whatever you get every single time the Red Sox sign somebody like this, let's have a conversation about how he actually fits on the Boston Red Sox, because there are a couple important things I think you have to note with this Nathaniel Lowe signing. The first is that this is kind of a really outlier season for him. Over his last 6 years in Major League Baseball, he's been a really productive hitter. In fact, between 2019 and 2024, he has not had a single season with an OPS plus below 100. He's been at least average or better at the plate in every other year but this year. His OPS in general never got below a 749 before this season. He's shown power in the past, he's shown an ability to get on base in the past, and he's been in total between 2019 and 2024 one of the top 10 most productive offensive first basemen in the entire sport. Sometimes you got to look at things as, well, are they an outlier or are they a trend? And this year in particular with Nathaniel Lowe, at this point in time, does look like it's a little bit of an outlier. Can the Red Sox find something in here to get him back to the way he was hitting before he ended up on the Nationals? Is there something to be said about just simply getting out of Washington, which was a team who just simply was going nowhere, to a team that's in the midst of a wild card race, that's in the midst of a division race? Does that do anything to Nathaniel Lowe? The second thing here is exactly what role Nathaniel Lowe is going to be used in, because this isn't so much a, hey, we're signing you to be the everyday first baseman of the Boston Red Sox, right? Because you've got Romy Gonzalez over there who's been really fantastic as of late, especially against left-handed pitching. The role Nathaniel Lowe is going to end up playing is as that sort of platoon, right? The guy who's going to come in and hit righties. And that's something he's done exceptionally well throughout his career. And even to this season, amidst the worst season of his career, he's been an average bat against them. He's hitting .235 with a .312 on base percentage and a .421 slug for a .732 OPS against righties. That's a .101 OPS plus. First and foremost, that is moderately better than what you were getting out of Abraham Toro basically since June 1st. So you immediately, even if he continues to produce like this, getting an upgrade over there. Most of his home run production, most of his RBI production has come against right-handed pitching. So it kind of does feel like this is going to work out, at least in terms of the actual role he's going to play. Not in terms of his overall statistics, but the actual role he's going to have on the field. You never really know, right? The hope right now is that the Red Sox were pretty hell-bent on getting this guy. They were hell-bent on getting him in May. They tried to get him at the trade deadline, and now they've got him after he was DFA'd. There's clearly something here that the Red Sox see that they're like, hey, we think we could pull that production out of. Is this an outlier season or is this a trend? Is the question we're going to be answering over these next few weeks, watching him on the field. And I'm kind of excited to see what he can do, but they got to fit him onto this roster. And this is where this whole injury conversation we had at the beginning of the video comes into play, because over the weekend, not only did we get Nathaniel Lowe added to the roster, we also got some guys who are going to be off the roster for a little bit. Most significantly, I think, is Marcelo Mayer, who will not be returning this season, and that totally sucks. As you guys know, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Marcelo Mayer getting a cortisone shot in his wrist to try and avoid having season-ending surgery. It ultimately didn't, and unfortunately, I believe it's either today, tomorrow, or Wednesday, Marcelo Mayer is going to have to undergo that season-ending surgery. It's going to keep him out for about 3 months. Now, the silver lining here is that this will permanently fix it. He dealt with this in 22. He's dealing with this in 25. The hope is that, okay, get the surgery, rest up. You're still young. Let's get you back here for opening day next year and see what you could do with a full season, right? And I think ultimately that's going to end up working out for the Red Sox better in the long run than trying to push him through this wrist injury just simply to get him back onto this field, because one, you probably wouldn't be getting any sort of level of production from him on the field or at the plate. Two, again, he's so young. He has so much time to grow and experience Major League Baseball that it wouldn't really be worth it to try and risk anything long-term to push him out here right now. However, I think we're at the point now with Marcelo Mayer, despite the fact that he's only 22 years old, that we have to have at least this conversation of, can Marcelo stay on the field for an entire season, right? Because even dating back to his minor league years, he has not had a year yet where he's played an entire full season at any level. And that's a little bit of a concern, right? And even I, who's a giant Marcelo fan, and even I, who sits here and says, look, he's still young, time to grow, time to, get better at understanding your body to avoid some of these problems, has to sit here and say, man, is Marcelo Mayer ever going to be able to give you a full season on the field? And I think next year is going to be really important for that, right? I'm not giving up hope on it. I'm not sitting here saying there's absolutely no chance, because again, just 22 years old, right? If he was 26, 27 and this was still the case, you sit here and you're like, this could be a little bit of an issue. Right now, it's just sort of sitting there being like, can he prove it? Right? And I think next year's his year that he's going to have to prove that he could, at least at the bare minimum, stay on the field for a majority of these games. 120, 130, 140. Can he get out there for that amount of games here and legitimately be impactful? Because if he can't, the Red Sox may have a bit of a situation on their hand. But what this means is it does open the opportunity for the Red Sox to just simply glide Nathaniel Lowe onto this 40-man roster, moving Marcelo Mayer to the 60-day IL. He's probably going to end up there anyways. The problem with this is that it still doesn't really solve the idea of how to get Nathaniel Lowe onto the 26-man roster. For that, you're going to have a little bit of an interesting conversation. Now, one of the easy ways you could do this is you could option Connor Wong and move Ali Sanchez into that backup catcher role. However, I don't really know how, highly the Red Sox regard Ali Sanchez, considering the fact that he's been with the Red Sox for over a week now, and we have seen him one singular time, and that was as a pinch hitter in a blowout game against the Houston Astros. He hasn't gotten a start. He hasn't played any meaningful defensive innings. To me, that kind of tells you exactly what the Red Sox think of him. I don't see this as a legitimate possibility. In all reality, the sort of cleanest way, in my opinion, to get Nathaniel Lowe on the 26-man roster is unfortunately to DFA Abraham Toro, right? You sit there with Toro. He hasn't been hitting well since June. You sit there with where he would fit on this roster. You've got Romy Gonzalez who can play third base. You've got Romy and Nathaniel Lowe that could play first base. You can cover the ground that you'd lose with Abraham Toro there. Both Christian Campbell and Yostinson Garcia are down in AAA working on first base, so if something else does happen, you do have some backups down there. You've got your bases covered basically in the event that you do DFA Toro, and to me, that's a big indication. And you don't go out and you get a first baseman like Nathaniel Lowe if your goal is to just simply hold on to Abraham Toro, right? To me, it just sort of feels like this is exactly what's going to happen here, but there is a world in which both these moves happen, where Ali Sanchez is DFA'd and Abraham Toro is DFA'd. And that's because in the series finale of the Marlins series, unfortunately, Wilyer Abreu running home on a sac fly kind of tweaked something a little bit. He pulled up a little bit, limped on over to home plate, ended up getting taken out of the game. And after the game, he talked with reporters. It was right calf tightness. Now, Wilyer Abreu says that it's probably not going to end up being an IL stint. He talked about it saying he probably just needs a couple of days off his feet and thinks he should be back for that New York Yankees series. Now, we've actually heard this before from Wilyer, and he has ended up on the IL, so I'm not going to totally take it out of the conversation yet, but it's always a good sign when a guy says that's not really that big a deal, right? Hopefully, he could be back in that time span. He just needs a couple of days off, and he doesn't need the IL, but the Red Sox are covering their bases anyways, because according to our friend Andrew Parker here, the Red Sox brought Nate Eaton back up to the major league level. Now, again, if Wilyer Abreu isn't going to end up on the IL, and the Red Sox just simply need somebody for the next 3 days, Nate Eaton makes a pretty decent amount of sense. He hasn't been incredibly productive with the Red Sox this season. It's a 250 average with a 296 on base percentage and a 333 slug for a 76 OPS plus. It's about, 24% below league average production, 24 games. He has had some cool moments for sure, though, and he's a pretty decent defender. I think a lot of people are going to sit there and they're going to say, well, wait a second, there's an injury to an outfielder. Why are we not bringing up Yostinson Garcia? He's been electric down in AAA, and I think the answer to that is, one, you don't really want to start his major league service time clock with an injury that you're probably replacing him again in the next 5-10 days, right? Maximum. I think minimum it's a couple of days off his feet. Maximum it's Wilyer Abreu missing a week and a half of Major League Baseball here. You don't want to start his clock just for that. Two, you also don't want to take him out of the development that he's in, right? They're clearly still working on things with Yostinson, so that's a big part of it. I think because of how short of a time it is, Nate Eaton does make a lot of sense. And again, this goes back to, okay, how do you fit him on the 26-man roster, right? Again, you could option Connor Wong, which is really the only option you have left remaining here, or you could DFA Ali Sanchez, and this is what I'm talking about, right? In the next 24 hours, or really in the next 12 hours, I think all of this is going to happen before today's game here. You're probably going to see a DFA of Toro and a DFA of Ali Sanchez, and it's to get Nathaniel Lowe and Nate Eaton on this team. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to be totally heartbroken if they DFA Ali Sanchez. I know a lot of people don't want Connor Wong in the Red Sox, but I mean, Ali Sanchez probably wasn't going to give you much more than what Connor Wong was offering. Overall, like I said, it was a busy news morning for the Boston Red Sox, right? I think the biggest news out of all of these has to be the addition of Nathaniel Lowe. In my opinion, that's the guy who could end up making the biggest impact on the Boston Red Sox between now and the end of the season. This is sort of a little bit of a lottery pick, in my opinion, right? Because he's having such a poor year, but is it, again, the situation he was in Washington? Is it something that the Red Sox picked out pretty quickly? Do they just simply need to get him in front of Alex Bregman, right? It feels like Alex Bregman's a one-stop shop to fixing your swing, so maybe they just put him in front of, hey, Bregman, do something with this guy, right? And all of a sudden, this guy's hitting the way he was hitting over the last couple of years. if he does do that, this could be a really big impact for the Red Sox. The Red Sox have been missing some real legitimate power over there at that first base spot, at least against right-handed pitching. This could be the guy that absolutely does that. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Outside of that, I think Marcelo going down for the rest of the year is pretty significant, especially considering his injury history. I think the Red Sox bullpen blowing a game again. Dude, that like these losses in August just simply hurt more. I mean, I got sunburned to hell. My nose is so red, and I still think that loss yesterday hurt more than the sunburn on my face. That's just where we're at in the season with the Boston Red Sox. So that to me is also pretty important. And obviously, getting 2 roster moves that we're probably going to see by the end of the day, obviously pretty impactful. So keep an eye out for those. If it does, we will cover it right here on Red Seat Radio. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of all this. What do you think of the signing? What do you think of the injuries? What do you think of the series? Whole lot of things to have a conversation about. Let me know in the comments. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton. Best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you guys want to listen instead of watch, all you got to do is head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the Red Seats.